The numbers match, and your first thought isn't about the money at all. It's that the ticket in your hand was never actually yours to begin with. Not really. Not in the way that's about to matter more than anything else in your life for the next several weeks. Your hand is still trembling slightly as you set your phone down next to the ticket on the kitchen counter, checking the numbers a second time and then a third, not because you doubt the match, but because some part of you is hoping the repetition will make the situation feel more settled than it actually is. Marcus handed you 75 cents that morning, the exact leftover change rattling in his jacket pocket, and said, half joking, "Grab me one too while you're up." His ticket cost $2. You covered the remaining $1.25 out of your own pocket without really thinking about it, the way you'd cover a friend short on a coffee order, and told the clerk 2 tickets, one for each of you. You walked back to your desk without thinking about it again. That was 11 days ago. You have thought about almost nothing else since 8:12 last night, when the numbers on your phone matched the numbers on a slip of paper sitting in your kitchen drawer. Here's the part that's keeping you up at night, more than the number itself. Both tickets came out of the same transaction, the same 2 mixed bills of cash, and you genuinely cannot remember, with total certainty, which slip was actually his and which was actually yours. You'd shoved both slips into the same jacket pocket. You call a lawyer before you call your family, before you call Marcus, because the first thing you learn, sitting in a strip mall office at 9 a.m. with a folder full of paperwork you'd printed the night before, changes how you understand the entire situation. In many states, an unsigned lottery ticket is treated as a bearer instrument, meaning physical possession can give the holder a very strong legal position. That's not the same thing. She's careful to tell you twice, as a guarantee that no other claim could ever exist. It depends on your specific state's rules, and it depends on what happens next. The lawyer, a calm woman named Denise, who's clearly fielded some version of this question before, pulls up your state's specific administrative code on her monitor and reads a section out loud, slowly, twice, making sure you actually absorb it instead of just nodding along out of politeness. She tells you she's seen a version of this exact dispute maybe 4 times in her career, and that the ones that go badly almost always go badly because somebody waited too long to get real legal advice and instead spent weeks having the conversation with anxiety. You appreciate the bluntness even as it makes your stomach tighten further. This should feel like good news, and for about 4 minutes in that lawyer's office, it does. Then she asks you a question. Did you say anything to Marcus that morning that could be read as an agreement to split winnings? You think back, carefully, replaying a sentence you'd said without thinking. You'd told him, grabbing his change, "Don't worry, I got you." She tells you plainly that she can't give you a clean answer either way. The ticket gives you a strong position. That's not the same thing as guaranteeing you'd win a dispute if Marcus decided to bring one, particularly if he can show any pattern of you two buying tickets together before. You did buy tickets together before. Not often. Splitting the cost roughly evenly, splitting nothing because neither of you had ever won anything worth splitting. You leave the lawyer's office with less certainty than you walked in with, which is not what you'd expected paying $400 for an hour of someone's time to feel like. You don't tell Marcus that day. You don't tell him the next day either. You go to work both days like normal, which takes a specific, exhausting kind of effort, sitting 2 desks away from someone you've known for 6 years, someone who brought you soup once when you were sick and never mentioned it again, while carrying a number in your head that could change both your lives depending on a sentence you can't remember saying with total precision. He notices something's off by day 3. He asks if you're okay at lunch, genuinely concerned, and you tell him you're just tired, which isn't a lie exactly, just an incomplete truth doing the work of a real one. You go home that night and sit at your kitchen table with the actual number in front of you for the first time since the lawyer's office. The advertised jackpot is $8.4 million. Assuming a typical cash value discount for a prize this size, the lump sum comes to roughly $4.6 million. After a reasonable estimate for combined federal and state withholding, the number that would actually land in an account is close to $3.1 million. You'd expected, walking into this, that the number itself would be the hardest part to sit with. It isn't. What's hardest is the specific low-grade guilt of watching Marcus go about his ordinary week, complaining about a slow printer, showing you a photo of his kid's soccer game, entirely unaware that a decision affecting both your lives is currently sitting unresolved in your head. You almost tell him twice that week, the words getting as far as your throat both times before you swallow them back down, telling yourself you need one more day to think it through properly. You run a version of the math you're not proud of running. If Marcus has a real claim, even a partial one, even something a court might award him as a good faith settlement rather than a full 50%, you're looking at potentially giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars over 75 cents and a sentence you can barely remember saying. If you say nothing and just claim the full amount yourself, there's a real chance nothing ever comes of it. Marcus doesn't know the winning ticket was the one his change touched. He doesn't know you've spoken to a lawyer. He doesn't know anything yet except that you've seemed distracted for 3 days. You find yourself, uncomfortably, rehearsing versions of a future conversation that never happens, imagining what you'd say if he ever found out on his own and asked you directly why you never mentioned it. Day 5. You call your sister, not for legal advice this time, just because you need to say the actual situation out loud to someone who isn't billing you $400 an hour to hear it. She listens without interrupting, and when you finish, she asks one question that lands harder than anything the lawyer asked. Forget what's legally yours for a second. What's the version of this you could actually live with in 5 years? You don't have an immediate answer. You tell her you'll call her back. You don't sleep much that night either. You keep landing on the same uncomfortable fact, turning it in different directions, hoping it'll look different from a new angle. It doesn't. Marcus's 75 cents bought a little more than a third of that $2 ticket, not half, a little over a third. The math on that alone complicates the tidy story you'd have preferred, where either the whole thing is clearly his or clearly yours. It's neither. It's something smaller and messier sitting in between. Day 7, you tell him. Not because the legal picture changed, your lawyer still maintains your position is strong. Not that a formal claim would necessarily go nowhere, but because you run your sister's question one more time and can't find an answer that involves staying quiet that you're willing to live inside for the next several decades. You ask him to get coffee after work, somewhere quiet, and you tell him the whole thing plainly. The ticket, the change, the numbers, the 11 days of silence, all of it, including the part where you seriously considered saying nothing at all. Your hands are shaking slightly, holding your own coffee cup as you talk, and you notice yourself talking faster than usual, the words coming out in a rush you don't fully control, as if getting through the explanation quickly might somehow make it land softer. Marcus doesn't say anything for the first minute or so, just listens, his own cup untouched on the table between you, and the silence stretches long enough that you start to genuinely wonder if you've just ended a 6-year friendship over a decision you made in a lawyer's office 2 weeks earlier. He's quiet for a long moment. Then he says the thing you weren't fully braced for. He'd forgotten about the 75 cents almost immediately, the same way you'd forget about lending someone $1 for a vending machine. He's not owed anything, he says, and he means it. You can tell, though you also notice he says it a little too quickly, the way people sometimes rush past, a feeling they haven't fully located yet. You don't leave it there. You offer him $100,000, a number you'd settled on somewhere around 2 a.m. 2 nights earlier. Not because any lawyer told you to, not because you think you're legally obligated to, but because it's the number that let you finally sleep that night. He says no at first. You insist a second time. He accepts, eventually, on the condition that you both put something in writing this time, actual writing, signed by both of you, with Denise drafting the agreement so it reflects what you've actually decided, rather than leaving it to another ambiguous sentence like the one that started this whole mess. You claim the prize 2 weeks later through whatever legal structure your state provides for winners who want to limit public disclosure. The $100,000 already routed to Marcus before the rest of the money finishes processing. He buys a modest car and puts most of the rest into an index fund on the advice of an advisor you introduce him to. Someone who tells him, only half joking, that $100,000 invested and left alone for 30 years does something a lot more interesting than a nicer apartment would. You and Marcus still work 2 desks apart. It's different between you? Not worse exactly, just different. The specific kind of different that happens once money has passed through a friendship and both people know it. You catch each other, occasionally in a slightly longer pause than usual before answering an ordinary question. Both of you privately aware of the 11 days neither of you talks about directly anymore. He brings up the investment advisor sometimes, unprompted, tells you how the account's doing, a small ongoing thread between you that feels like its own quiet form of the paperwork you both signed, an informal check-in. Neither of you is required to keep, but neither of you has stopped doing either. You catch yourself some days replaying that morning at the counter, the exact words you'd used handing him his ticket. You still can't remember them with total precision. You've stopped needing to. The $100,000 wasn't really a legal settlement in the end. It was the actual price of not spending the next 30 years wondering what you would have said if he'd ever asked you directly.